Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I was going to tell a Burning Man story too, but it's not about a festival in the desert. It's good to be in Fairfax. I was actually supposed to be in Pittsburgh tonight, ironically enough, attending a Masquerade karaoke wedding, which sounded a lot like that Halloween party Jessica was talking about. But guess what, Fairfax, you lucked out and got me tonight. So Pittsburgh's loss is Fairfax's gain, or Fairfax's loss is Pittsburgh's gain. I guess it's all a matter of perspective. Speaking of perspective, when people get to know me on a more intimate level, they tell me afterwards, when I first met you, you kind of came across as too cool for school. I don't know what school they're referring to, but if we're off to that start already, I'm sorry. I assure you, I've got some depth. Here, let me throw this out to show you what a sensitive, meaningful, deep guy I am. I cry at weddings. It's true, I do. I mean, when I walk in, from the sound of green sleeves to the vows to the recessional, 99.9% of the time, rest assured, there are going to be some tears throughout that event. And usually I'm the one asking the bride's mother for some tissues because I'm going to be bursting into tears at any point. And it's not because I'm moved by anything particular at the event. It's just this romanticized notion I have that despite the atrocious rates of divorce that are taking place in this country today, that two people are willing to get up in front of each other and profess their love to each other. And that moves me to the core. And despite this jaded, too cool for school persona that I apparently project, I still believe, as a 43-year-old single man, there is still hope for me, that there is someone out there that I can fall madly in love with. So when I got invited to a New York wedding, two things immediately came to mind. How quickly would I burst into tears? And secondly, who were the single women that were going to be at this wedding that I might potentially fall in love with? Now, the only tears I cried that day were tears of joy because the bride and groom had done their homework. And it was as if they went out of their way to plan this wedding to avoid any sort of outburst on the part of yours truly. There was no music, there was no procession, there was no recession, there was no church, there was no temple, there was a bar, there was an open bar, there was a raw bar, and there was a lot of dancing, and that was it. The tears I cried were tears of joy. I spent a fair amount of time making my way from the open bar to the dance floor to the raw bar, back and forth, stopping from time to time to chat up the bridesmaids, the attendees, the waitstaff, and anyone else who would care to have a conversation with me. If I had any complaint about this wedding, it was that it ended far too early. Who wants to go to bed at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night in New York City? I mean, that's crazy. So, as often is the case, after the wedding, everyone went back to the boutique hotel we were all staying with. We had drinks, and all the married people said goodnight. You know what I'm talking about, married people. But this is New York City. This is a city that never sleeps. I'll be damned if I'm going to bed at 11 o'clock. So while everybody else went up to their overpriced hotel rooms, I made my way out into the street, stopping for a moment in front of the hotel to breathe in the New York City air. It smelled like car exhaust and piss. As I stood there wondering what would happen next, the doorman turned to me and he said, you look like you're looking for a party. And I said, as a matter of fact, I am. He said, well, let me introduce you to Tanya. She's in town from Canada. I said, hello, Tanya. I'm Pierce. How are you? She introduced herself. We spoke for a while. I said, you know what, I'm feeling spontaneous. It's New York City. What do you say we go out and have a good time? She said, well, you know, I usually don't do this, but sure, why not? That sounds like fun. Maybe we'll get a story out of it. I said, sounds great. So we hailed a cab, and as I'm hopping into the cab, I remember the words of my father, who spent 15 years as a New York City police officer. Pierce, don't ever hop in the car with a stranger. I said, but Dad, she's Canadian. What could possibly go wrong? We hopped in the cab, we made our way downtown. I told the taxi driver, take us someplace we can have drinks, we can dance, I don't care, I'm feeling spontaneous. And as the cab spun from Midtown to downtown, we got to talking, me and Tanya from Canada. I came to find out that she was from Ottawa, and I immediately remembered a trip I took as a 4-year-old boy with my family to Canada, where we visited Ottawa, climbed to the top of the Parliament building, and saw the changing of the guard, and visited the clock tower. I described my trip to her, and she must have felt some degree of comfort that someone knew where Ottawa was, and she grasped my hand in hers, which I thought was rather forward for a Canadian. She began massaging my hand, and it was as if my entire body suddenly felt relaxed. It immediately made me remember the first time I ever had a massage at the Greenbrier, where a salty old sailor just completely rubbed me down and made me feel fantastic. So my immediate thought was, Tanya must have some massage training. We finally arrived at a jazz club. We hopped out. I paid $40 to walk through the door. We sat down in a rather empty club, and I ordered 2 drinks. They didn't have Labatt's on the menu, much to Tanya's chagrin. Over 2 Heinekens, we continued our chat. I really didn't have any aim other than to have a unique experience. I was feeling spontaneous, and truthfully, I wasn't all that attracted to Tanya. She looked like a cross between the actress Tilda Swinton and Anne of Green Gables. And by that I mean she had the physical appearance of Tilda Swinton, and she was dressed as Anne of Green Gables. And there wasn't anything particularly remarkable about her, but there wasn't anything unremarkable about her either. She was getting a bit anxious as we sat there and talked over our Heinekens, and she pulled out her telephone. I assumed that she had to send a text, or she wanted to update her Facebook status, something like, I just met this really interesting man in New York and I'm having drinks at a jazz club. But that wasn't the case. She started going through her photos on her phone, and I thought perhaps this was some strange Canadian tradition, and she wanted to show me pictures of her mom and dad back in Ottawa. She slid the phone across the table and gestured for me to pick it up. There before me was a picture of Tanya. I believe the kids call them selfies. It was a full frontal shot in the bathroom mirror. She didn't have any clothes on. I had, at that moment, what scholars of James Joyce refer to as an epiphany. Or if you don't follow literature and your movies are more your thing, it's in that M. Night Shyamalan movie when Bruce Willis realizes he's dead. I realized what I had stumbled into. And I said, very matter-of-factly, Tanya, I'm wasting your time. You've got business to conduct elsewhere. Perhaps you should go. She said, oh, Pierce, I don't know what you mean, but I'm certain we could have a good time together. I said, be that as it may, it's time for you to leave. Can I have some cab money, she asked. No. With that, she got up, she left, and I swear I could hear her say a few Canadian curses under her breath as she left the jazz club. I sat there for a moment, I finished my Heineken, then I finished her Heineken, and I wandered out back into the New York City air, pausing for a moment to consider walking the 2 miles back to the hotel just as a form of punishment for what I had just put myself through. Senses prevailed, and I hailed a cab and made my way back uptown. An hour and a half later, from where this ordeal began, I stood in front of the same boutique hotel, pausing for a moment to breathe in the fumes and piss. "Pierce, you changed your mind," said a voice next to me, and sure enough, there was Tanya in the same spot we had met. "No, I've not changed my mind, Tanya. You have a good night." I made my way to my hotel room. I laid in bed for a little while, and I stared at the ceiling. And I learned an important lesson. If you're at the bar at a wedding, and the bridesmaids turn you down, and you're on the dance floor, and all the single ladies who put their hands up, turn you down, and if it's at the end of the night, and the waitstaff who's dismantling the raw bar turn you down, maybe it's just not your night. But take hope, because there will be other weddings, and I shed a tear. Thank you.